In this episode, Darrell visits with Nebraska artist Rachel
Joining us
Brownlee.
today on It's Art, Let's Talk About It is the Nebraska artist Rachell Brownlee. And Rachel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're glad to have you all the way from Nebraska this afternoon.
Yes, very rural Nebraska.
Yeah, very rural Nebraska. Rachel is, for those of you just listening, not know much about Rachel, is our recent artist in our 40th Roundup exhibition and show, and sold a major work in our exhibition. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And Rachel, let's start with the very basics of the It's Art, Let's Talk About It questions. Were you one of those young artists who knew from the time you were 3 years old that you were going to be a painter, an artist, or is this a relative recent development in your life? Or how did you get to where from those early drawings to the moment where you could sell a major work in a museum show? Talk about your involvement, if you will.
I was always good at drawing, but we were ranchers. The expectation was that you'd get a good education and then you'd probably ranch. Regardless of what you did, it would be a very practical, work with your hands type of life. That's what you were expected to have. So everybody thought that my drawing was cute, but that it was really irrelevant. There was no point in pursuing it, and nobody was really encouraging me with that. I was homeschooled, actually, for my entire education, so I never had any exposure to the arts whatsoever. At all, really. I never even saw a fine art magazine. I didn't even know that it existed.
Are you serious?
We had a Tim Cox calendar. The local auction barn always sent out a Tim Cox calendar, and I thought that's pretty cool. And so that little bit of realism is the only artwork I was exposed to. And I just drew what I knew. I drew the horses that we had. I drew the cowboys that we had. And I was probably better than a 12-year-old should have been, but I just didn't really pursue it. And then I ended up getting a college degree in software engineering, and I worked in that for a number of years. And then I actually married my high school sweetheart and moved back to his family's ranch, about half an hour from where I grew up. And he really encouraged me to just pick up drawing again, just because he thought I was good at it. And that was about it. And then someone told me I should apply for the Mountain Oyster Club show, which I thought was a scam because it sounded like a weird name. But I did it. And they accepted my piece, and I undertook the terror of shipping a glass glazed piece of artwork all the way down to Tucson. And then I decided to go down to that show, and I won Best of Show at that show. And since then, that was 2 years ago. That was 2021.
So only 2 years ago, right during the height of COVID.
Yeah.
So
since then, I've been busy.
You are brand new in the West.
Brand new.
It's really funny when I talk to artists, and on this program we talk to people like Jack Sorensen. He's been painting since he was 3 years old, right?
Wow.
He has 60 some odd years of experience with it. And it's funny to see the enthusiasm I hear in your voice for your work and the enthusiasm I hear in his voice and all of these people. It's a strange little world that you ventured into.
It is.
You did it right during the height of the pandemic.
Yes, that didn't really affect us a great deal on this ranch, just because we're so rural that we're not in school and we only work on the ranch. So really, it didn't affect our daily lives here.
Yeah. Why pencil? And before we ask that question, before you answer that question, for those of you listening along, you can see examples of Rachel's work on our website on the exhibition catalog, including the piece that she sold, the magnificent work. And we'll be sure to post those out there, additional works. But where can people find your work if they want to see examples of your work? Is there a website?
Yeah, RachellBrownlee.com.
Just that simple. First, last name, Rachel, and then Brownlee is BROWNLE.
Yep.
.com, and they'll be able to see examples of your work.
Yep, and all of my shows and everything.
More about it.
Yep.
So talk about why the medium that you chose.
I think I probably really just didn't have a choice. I didn't even really know that people painted. I We didn't have access to paint. We didn't go to art stores. There were no brushes. I didn't know anything about it. So I had a pencil and I had a notebook, and that's what I started with. And then at some point, and I don't even really remember when, somebody gave me a charcoal pencil, and I just loved how black it was compared to graphite and how matte it was, the texture, and I've stuck with that ever since.
So you just, out of necessity, you painted what you knew or drew what you know, and that is your ranch life, and you did it with the mediums that were readily available to you.
Yep, that
Any,
simple.
any plans for venturing into other mediums now that you've been exposed to them?
I wouldn't mind. In fact, I would love to train underneath someone at some point, but I think I have barely scratched the surface of what is possible with charcoal.
Well, you
And
talk about Mountain Oyster Show, and then, of course, our show most recently here in September of this past year, um, in which you won a major award. You won the Patron's Choice Award for your work, the big saddle piece, fencing rig, I think is what it was called. And that gives you the rights to help us with the banner next year. It gives you the ability to, that's where we're going to start with a lot of your work on advertising for the show in April.
very cool.
It's Mountain Oyster Show and win a best of show award. This show, other shows that you've been involved in since the Mountain Oyster Show?
I won Best of Show at the Cowgirl Up show this spring.
So it seems like you just, every time you enter something, you win, right?
Kind of.
Don't be too modest. There's a chance to.
It's not every time, but so far in my very short 2-year career, I have won 3 major
At what
awards.
point did you think maybe I can actually make some money with this? I can make a living with this.
I think I talked to a few artists at some of these shows, and I was just amazed that they've been doing this as their livelihood for some of them their whole lives. And they encouraged me and said, "You can as well. You just have to find the right market."
You just have to step out there and get in the right market and get with the right people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. What drives you with your subject matter? Is it themes on a regular basis? Is it
Everything that I draw is my neighbors, my horses, their cattle. I just think that there's an inherent beauty in this Western lifestyle that is still alive rather than a historical pastoral piece. A lot of artists depict the West as having existed in the past, but a lot of them don't realize that people like me are still living this exact life today. They still wear the same boots, they still ride the same saddles. Maybe some of those saddles have been used for over 100 years, like the saddle that I drew. I just think it's really beautiful.
and in your, I mean, you're still involved in the day to day of ranching. You're a ranch woman.
Yes, all the time. We're weaning calves right now. You can hear them out the window if the audio is good enough.
And so the family, you paint, you draw. When do you have time? Because being a ranch woman is a full-time activity in and of itself, I think.
Pretty much everything I do, people would consider a full-time activity. So being a ranch wife, having 2 kids, maintaining a long distance running journey. I compete, so I have to stay trained on that. And then my fine art is at least 40 to 50 hours a week by itself.
So you got a 50 hour work ranch wife, and you train as an athlete.
They all just knit together.
And it just, where do you find the hours? And a mom, how do you find the hours in the day to do everything, much less anything? Is one of those questions.
Yeah.
What training are you thinking about, and have you been involved in the last couple of years?
With my artwork?
Yeah.
Nothing other than drawing 40 hours a week.
So you're out there really living it from life.
Yes, as much as I can. I try to do a lot of historical education myself when I can find a few minutes to read. My great aunt, Mari Sandoz, is one of the great authors for the Plains Indians, and she wrote excellent nonfiction books about them. So I try to read those and educate myself about the history of the subject matter that I draw.
So if you had to pick a subject matter, it's literally things that you see every day.
I think that gives my work its passion, because black and white could be dry, possibly, but I am really passionate about depicting something that I know very intimately. I'm not looking at it from the outside. So I know the body language of the horses that I'm drawing, and I know why the people are using the tack and the equipment that I depict. All of it is very personal for me.
Right. So where do you see it going? More of the same?
I don't think it will be the same. I'm pondering some changes that I don't think will be the end. I've only been doing this for 2 years,
Right.
and I'm turning 30 this week. So I have a lot of years of drawing left to me. So who knows where it will go.
One of the reasons I wanted to interview you for the podcast is that, like I mentioned earlier, we do spend a lot of time talking to artists who have been doing this for 70 and 80 years, a long time, right? You think about some of the folks who've been on my podcast. Herman Walker's been drawing for forever, a man in his mid 70s. Bill Farnsworth in Florida. There have been just tons of others, and it's a different perspective when you get to visit with somebody who, I mean, relatively new at the thing.
I'm sure it is. And I have no idea what my work will look like in 60 years.
Well, I think you have something in the back of your mind that you're playing with. Care to give us a hint what that is? What changes can we expect? What direction can we think you can go?
Almost none of my work is on paper anymore. So I feel like I'm pushing the boundary of painting and charcoal. In fact, I usually call my work charcoal paintings. Now, as of the last 6 months, I've been doing all of my work on panel.
Okay.
So that it can be directly varnished and then displayed just like any other painting. And the visceral intimacy you get with that, you walk up to what is clearly a charcoal drawing or a photograph, depending on how you look at it. Some of them are so realistic they look like photographs. And the fact that you could just reach out and touch it with your own fingers just crosses this mental border between being a drawing and being a painting.
How do you choose what works you're going to enter into a show? For example, why the fencing rig for our exhibition here this September?
Yours was the first show I've gotten into in Texas. And I think that the history of the West and the history of ranching is really much more intimate down there, more well-known, I should say. Right. Nebraska has a long history with it, but that's not what Nebraska is known for. It's known for farming, which is excellent. But my work, I think, the subject matter is particularly good for Texas.
There's two now that I know in Nebraska, two wonderful artists, yourself and Brandon Bailey, the Cowboy Artist of America.
Yeah.
Are you on
Yeah, he's my cousin.
Really?
Yes, he's my cousin.
Yeah, I remember. I think somebody told me that. But are you guys on the same side of the state or opposite ends?
We are. Yeah, we're only a couple of hours from each other.
It's a weird. I went years without knowing a single artist from Nebraska. Now I have two very good ones.
There's Phil Epp as well. I think he's a Cowboy Artist of America.
When I met Phil, yeah. So
he doesn't live here anymore, I don't think.
They're developing a reputation. Phil originally from Nebraska, now lives in Kansas. But
yeah.
Which artists out there are impressing you? What direction, when you look at work, now that you're getting magazines and seeing other works and going to shows, who comes to mind that you'd like to find out more about their work?
I've always admired Glenn Dean and Rick Kennington, probably for the same reason, is that I really enjoy their, sometimes they use like a pastel palette, and their work is more impressionistic than mine, obviously, but that's the type of work that I really like to look at. I prefer to look at their work rather than looking at my work. My work, I feel like, is almost a direct picture of my brain. It's very linear. It's very black and white and very straightforward, almost intrusive. If one of my pieces hangs on your wall, it almost demands to be looked at. It's audacious, maybe, but one of their pieces is just so beautiful and it's so calming and so pleasant to look at. And those are the two artists I would like to have on my own wall.
And those are two really wonderful artists. We've had both their works in the Museum of Western Art over the years, and will continue. So that's Folks, we're joined today by Rachell Brownlee, and for It's Art, Let's Talk About It. It is, you can go out and see her work off our website, which is www.museumofwesternart.com, or a real simple website for her as well, and that is Rachell Brownlee. That's Lee at the end, Brownlee, Lee.com. And Rachell, they can find more about you out there as well. I want to revisit something that you mentioned just a second ago, because I find art and artists to be so multifaceted. Very few artists that I know, that's all they do. There's a few, but so many of them are, in your case, ranchers. They have a full-time lifestyle that is very involved. And then they're involved in charities. They're involved in a lot of different things. I heard you say something that kind of piqued my interest, and I want people to know more about it. And that's long distance running.
Yeah.
Yes. Not often do you hear somebody in the art field who has either the time nor the inclination to put in the hours and the miles that it takes to be a competitive runner. What sort of running is it? Was it all cross country, marathon?
Marathon distance road running is what I do.
Marathon distance road running. So 26 miles at a whack.
Yep.
How do you find the time to do that? That just doesn't seem like it fits. What, do you have the husband drop you off in another town? And
like this morning, I left in the complete dark, and I got back right as the sun was coming up. And that's just how I've been doing it for the last 4.5 years since my daughter was born. I just run before she wakes up, and it gives you the motivation to get back on time because you know that your baby will be waiting for you. But typically I run out and then I run back. So it's an out and back run on our county road. And the community has had a great deal of fun with it over the last 5 years because nobody else out here does anything like that. And they all pass you going to work or going to school in the morning, and they pretend to run you down or honk at you or tell you should be working or something else. But
Forrest Gump thing, run, Rachel, run.
They have done that.
What competitions have you entered in?
I was in the Omaha Marathon, the Thedford Half Marathon, and the Spearfish Half Marathon. So I only do one formal race a year, but I run nearly every day.
And you run how far every day? What's your typical day look like?
Right now, I'm not preparing for a marathon, so I'm doing about 22 miles a week, which is pretty low stress. But as it gets into winter, I continue running outside, regardless of the weather. That's my self mantra. I have been out in negative 10 degrees and 40-mile-an-hour wind, running through snowdrifts, and I have been out in 105 degrees and 40-mile-an-hour winds. And it's like a reflection of my artwork, I think. No matter how difficult it is, it just needs done.
What's on the easel right now?
Some lovely horses drinking out of a stream. There's really nothing as beautiful to draw as horses. I always come back to that.
And if you had one thing you could draw, it would be horses.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And yet,
Yep.
One of the major awards that I don't know what you won at Mountain Oyster and at Cowgirl Up, but for us, it was a still life of a saddle.
Yep.
Calling the fencing rig.
Yep, those are such detailed, difficult pieces. Those still lifes that I do take so much time and so much brain power to create those intricate little details that sometimes it's really nice to take a break and draw something that's really pleasant to look at, which is a horse usually.
Yeah. Do you tend to draw the horse, draw an animal exactly as you see it, or is it close to realism? How close to photorealism are we getting in your work?
I think that I'm maybe just a hair below exactly photorealistic, and I could probably push that, but I don't know that there's value in that because I think that the point is not to recreate a photograph. That's never been the exact point. It's just to communicate exactly how I see something to someone else.
And your style would be considered tight versus loose?
Very, very. And I've heard from a lot of artists that they, over time, get a lot looser. That's the expectation. And I'm willing to have that I'm willing to pursue that. I just don't know how well that fits my style.
And I was in Fredericksburg, Texas last weekend and went into the Insight Gallery, and you have 6 or 8 works there at Insight.
Yeah, I think I have 4 at the moment there.
Is there? I was trying to count in my head, what I saw there, but I found that to be, knowing a little bit about your background, having brought you on for our show, that you had not done much in the way of shows and collector base. I found it pretty amazing that Insight, which is known as a very good national gallery, would bring somebody on who's so young and basically new at this game. Talk
Yeah.
about that. How did that come about? And were you shocked and surprised, or is that your first gallery representation?
It's my second. The Broadmoor Galleries took me
Okay.
on this summer, but I was very honored to be contacted by Insight and to hear that they were interested because of the reasons that you mentioned. And I know that they keep a very small stable of artists, if you will. They don't really exceed, I think, 70. So they really need to find somebody very unique, or they need to have another artist leave before they bring one on. And they said that they'd never brought on another pencil artist other than Mary Ross Buckles.
Right.
But they said that my work is so unique and they'd never seen anything like it before. And that's why they added me, which is,
No, I think
that's one of the greatest compliments an artist can receive, is to hear that their work is unique.
yeah, and I think if they're listening, I know they'll be listening, but both of the owners of Insight are good friends of ours, good friends of the museum. And I'm just going to accuse them right now of stealing you from, because they were here and saw your work. I think
Yeah.
they may have seen it in the past on other places, but I know they were here and stood a long time in front of your work talking about it. And so I was pleased when I went over there and saw those works on the walls, and hopefully you'll do real well with it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful gallery, and it was so amazing to go visit it and see my work there. It's always lovely to see your own work on the walls of a gallery like that.
Let's talk about the future for you. Is it just more of the same, more shows, Mountain Oyster again, perhaps?
Yes, I have a couple more this fall, the Mountain Oyster Club show and the Settlers West fall show. And then I have some applications out to some other shows that I haven't gotten into yet, but we'll see what next year holds for that.
And you're going to be in April's 41st annual Roundup exhibition and sale.
Yep, I'm planning on it.
And so start thinking about the invitation now, because it'll be your work that we'll use on our printed invitation that goes out. That's the Patron Choice Award winner every year. That's how we select the artist that's going to be on the invitation for the following year. So
that'll be very cool.
Yeah, you got to start having an invitation for a major museum.
Yeah.
museumofwesternart.com. Go out to our exhibitions page on the 40th annual Roundup exhibition and sale, and you can see Rachell's work there. We'll also post it on our podcast, the images that we have from the current exhibition. We'll find others to put out there. And then if you're interested and you're joining us just now, it's RachellBrownlee.com. RachellBrownlee.com. What about Facebook, Instagram, those sorts of things?
Yep, Rachell.L.Brownlee on Instagram, and then on Facebook it is Brownlee Fine Art.
Brownlee Fine Art on Facebook, and Rachell.L.Brownlee on the Instagram pages. So you've got the social media covered, got your own website, and you're off and running, as they say.
Yep.
So in addition to the shows, what's the next 2-3 years look like? Is it you are going to keep on ranching, obviously.
Yep.
Keep on helping the family. Sounds like you're a dedicated runner.
Yep.
A mom.
Yeah, our kids will be homeschooled, so that will be another thing I add to my plate in the next couple of years. My oldest is 4.5, so we're just getting into reading, so that takes plenty of its own time.
I bet it does. I cannot imagine. One of the reasons we wanted to do the podcast, Davey, with you is that, again, like I said, we interview a lot of people who've been in the game a very long time, and it's just encouraging to see somebody who's fresh in the game, fresh in the business, and not jaded by it. Still pretty. You haven't thrown your hands up in the air and quit yet, have you?
No, not in the last 2 years. I haven't.
In the museum industry, we try to quit every day, I think. Those kinds of things. Rachell, we appreciate taking the time for you. We're at the 30-minute mark on the podcast. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today from Nebraska. Let's give everybody one last shot. It's www.rachellbrownlee.com. I get that correct?
Yep.
Yeah, find out more. And of course, I've already seen it out there. You can go out to Insight Gallery and see the works out there. You can go to the Museum of Western Art webpage and see the works that we have on our website when this podcast is airing. Rachel, thanks for taking the time of joining us today. And we wish you all the best and all the luck. And I know we'll be in charge and back in touch. And we'll see you down here in April, I hope.
We will.
All right. Thanks, Rachel. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. Folks, this has been It's Art, Let's Talk About It. We've been joined today by Rachell Brownlee, Nebraska artist, new in her career. We encourage you to go out and take a look at her work at rachellbrownlee.com or here at the Museum of Western Art.com. Our websites are available for you. And we thank you for joining us today. And it's art. Let's talk about it.
This is Tom Fox. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of It's Art, Let's Talk About It, hosted by Darrell Beauchamp, Executive Director of the Museum of Western Art in Kerrville. If you're in Kerrville, I hope you'll drop by the museum. It's one of the great jewels of our little city and town, and one of the top 5 museums of Western art in America. If you've enjoyed this podcast episode, I hope you'll subscribe, rate, and review wherever great podcasts are listened to. It's Art, Let's Talk About It is a production of the Texas Hill Country Podcast Network.